But like, let me ask you a question though. Like, so dealing with modern Western Indians who are no longer subscribing to the arranged marriages, maybe some do, but for the most part, a majority of them, I'm assuming, is not, right? Not subscribing to arranged
that's why they come to me.
Right. So with you being in the picture and not the parents doing all the matching, what is your process in determining compatibility between like future partners or candidates to marry or be in a relationship? How do you know?
I think the key word you used there, Jeff, was future. Because I think so many people get stuck on how do I get to the altar? How do I get to the marriage part, right? So they're like, I want tall, dark, and handsome. I want somebody who makes 6 figures. But it's like, okay, now you're married. What happens next? Yeah. So after I kind of establish a baseline, who they are, what they're into, what their personality is all about, then we talk about, well, what do you actually see for yourself in your married life or in a committed relationship, even if it's not marriage, right? Like being in a committed relationship. What are the important aspects? Is it, I want to feel safe, secure, and supported? Is it, I want somebody who's going to be a good provider because I want to create this family and this future? Is it, I want to live in, I want to travel the world, or I want to do community service? What are your motivations once you find this partner and in living your life? So that is going to help determine long-term compatibility. Because if you're like, well, I want to go to Colombia and work from there for a month before I figure out what my next move is, versus you meet a girl who's like, I have a 5-year plan. I want to have this much in my 401k by the time I'm 40, You guys might not necessarily align with how you want to live your lives and live your futures. So that compatibility spans a lot more than just, can we get along right now? And I dive into that.
See, that's a good point. I've always said, like, find somebody who fits you for where you're headed, not for where you are.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I'll give myself one of these. Because a lot of people are fixated on where they're at, and they're like, I need somebody who understands me and who I am, and just in the present, right? Which sounds pleasant to say, oh, be in the present, and so on and so forth. But relationships is a growing thing. The definition of relationship includes time, right?
Yes.
So when you're talking about being with somebody, and I used to make this mistake as well, like I noticed a pattern in me when I was growing up, when I was younger. I was dating whoever I was with, and at the moment I like made a leap in my life, right? Made a change or had a certain level of success that was different from before. I'll be honest, the person I was with, I kiboshed him, right? They were, because they were no longer fitting to the setting that I was in. If I was smart enough to predict where I was going, I would have made different decisions on who I was with. But I was young, right? But I think that's...
Well, let me ask you about that then, Jeff. Again, you said you would make a different decision. Were you approaching those relationships with the idea of like, I want this to be long-term? Or was it kind of like in the moment, I'm with her or him and it makes sense?
I didn't even know. To be honest with you, it was one of those things where like when you're young, you just value being in you value being with someone that cares about you, right?
Right.
And you care about them, right? And then in your mind, you're thinking, this is going to turn into something. You don't know what it is. You know that eventually people get married. You don't know how you get to that point. And sometimes that's the only destination they give you. Sometimes the only destination they give you as a young person is like, find somebody that's good enough for you to marry. But marriage is, to a lot of people, is the destination to a relationship, when in reality it's like, there's so many things beyond that, right?
Should be the intermission.
Yeah, to me, like marriage is like a celebration of a relationship that just got started. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, we figured it out, so we're getting, like, it's stupid. Because to me, a lot of people that get married, they have this grandiose experience, which we got to talk about, because Indian weddings are crazy. Okay.
Yes.
Like nonsensical. Okay. But like you go through this grand experience, and I've come to learn that like a lot of people, you know, they have a false idea of what's supposed to happen after, because they're not, no one really talks about it as much, right? They assume that once you get married, it's like there's this template of things that's just going to happen because you're married now.
I would say too, your experience, what you just described, Jeff, is what I would say the difference between intentional dating or marriage-minded dating versus casual dating.
Right. No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. And each has a place. There's nothing wrong with either. But when you know I'm intentionally dating, that's when those serious questions come out. And that's when that long-term view starts coming out. That's the difference.
No, I mean, that's definitely a factor. And I've started to see a little bit of that in some of the experiences I've had, as well as other people have had. But at the same time, like when you're talking about a different culture, like Indians, I feel like they were brought up to be intentional.
Yes.
Right? And anyone that wasn't intentional probably made an effort to not be intentional, to like rebel. Right? That's an opinion that I have. I don't know if it's accurate or whichever, right?
Or you don't even know, right? If you have no idea how relationships work, if you come from an arranged marriage, you've never seen anybody date in your life, you've never seen your parents be intimate ever, how do you even know what the difference is? You don't.
No, that's true. That's true. But right now, you are, left with the job of finding compatibility between these people who might not know what they want, who might not know everything that fits for them. So you're there to kind of, source out the compatible person for them. Right. Mm-hmm, but how often do you use your situation, your current, relationship experience as a benchmark for how you coach and provide partnership for your clients? Does that come into play?
I use my relationship for everything. It was the basis of how I found like our founding principles for Single to Shadi. I knew for me, it was important. I wanted somebody who was similar immigration experience as me, had parents that came from a certain background, whatever. And then I went out and kind of like, I always say this now, I went out and manifested it, but I learned those words later. After talking to clients and figuring out and learning a little bit more about what it means to be intentionally dating or like working with other people, that's when I got the words. But I use my experience often because, my husband and I had a very short courtship because we both knew we were marriage minded. It was intentional. We met each other. We hit it off. We dated for a few months. We started meeting each other's families and extended friends group and stuff very quickly because we just felt that it worked. And within 6 months, we were engaged. And it wasn't because our family pressured us or anything like that. We both made that decision ourselves because we were intentional about what we were doing. So I use my example with my clients all the time. It's not going to be a 6-month process for everybody, but knowing kind of what you want and going into each new experience with those factors top of mind, it's going to help you make better decisions and maybe make better choices in who you're selecting as far as dating is concerned. So that when you're with that person, you get that 2 to 3 month, vibe going and you're like, I see a future. I'm going to continue to follow this up. Or what really helps for my clients is flipping that around. All right, it's been 2 or 3 months. I am not feeling it. This is not working. Yeah. It's not happening. Well, fine, let's cut our losses and let's move on. Instead of, I feel like in casual dating, you'd be like, but he's fun. I don't mind. We're still hanging out. Yeah, it's convenient. He lives in my building, whatever, things like that.
I've had that relationship. Yeah, but let me ask you a question though. Like, how old were you when you were dating your husband?
I met him at 25 and we got married at 26. I was a baby. I know.
Okay. So you were super intentional when you met your husband. You were 25. Yes. He was how old?
He was a year older than me. So he was 26.
He was 26. So if he was 26, you were 25. Would you say the average 25/26-year-old in the Western world is thinking like you, regardless of culture?
Regardless of culture? No, probably
okay.
not.
So which brings me to my next question. If you were brought up in the Indian culture to some degree, right? Yeah. Do you think you would have had the same urgency or put the same priority on being intentional? Or how much of your Indian culture contributed to your desire to have that kind of intentionality at 25?
Probably 90% of my Indian culture and upbringing. It was the reason why I decided to go down that path so early.
Okay. Yeah. So now let's talk about that for a second, right? In a lot of ways, you basically cultivated a hybrid arranged marriage.
Yes, especially if you know how I met my husband.
How did you meet him?
I went to an Indian marriage convention specifically because those people are there to get married.
Okay. So basically the culture still prevails.
Yeah.
Just in this like backdoor way. So when you're talking about a 25-year-old woman and man going to a marriage convention, first of all, I don't even know that exists. Okay. That's number one. And number two, for you to be 25, when you're 25 and you're in the Western world, you're going to a music festival.
Born and raised here.
You're going to a music festival. You're not going to no marriage. Like that makes no sense to me in terms of what I would expect for a 25-year-old. So even then, as modern as you might be, you still live within the I don't want to use the boundaries. You still live within the realm of what traditions your family, evolved under, right?
Tradition still guided me. And that's because it was important to me. And I think that's the key distinction, Jeff, is that it's not important to everyone, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be, but because it was for me, it already set me down a path, or I had a whole system that was already up there and ready for me to just to be like, say, yes, I'm ready, jump on this wave and go through the process.
So,
but I'll tell you, let me give you a little bit more though. Like it was a marriage convention, but I'll tell you, I've been going since I was in my mid to early 20s, but I went with my friends. I went with my cousins. It was like an excuse for us to party. And it was a sanctioned way for us to meet boys. Our parents would pay for us to go. It was like an early form of dating that was parent approved.
Men at a marriage convention.
When I'm 22, they're boys, right? Let's be honest.
Okay.
It takes a little more for the man part to kick in.
I got it. How long were you going to these marriage conventions? The first time?
Probably on and off. No, probably on and off for about 5 years.
See, I can't even deal with you right now because that means, okay, so let's go back. That means you've been marriage minded since 22, at least from the realm of what you were actively doing. For you to go to marriage conventions at 22, you know what 22-year-olds are doing now? They're twerking. I
was doing that then too. I was just able to do both.
You were twerking online?
Not online.
Okay.
But definitely was out there doing some questionable things out in the club. Yeah.
Things that would disqualify your marriageability. Got it. Yes. Anyway, all good things. But the point is, at 22, look at that mindset. At 22, you were intentional, even subconsciously, whether you knew it or not, right? 22-year-olds in the modern world, in the Western world, is not going to a marriage convention. I'm just telling you what it is. They're barely passing their classes in college that they're overpaying for, let alone going to a marriage convention. Okay.
Yep.
So that's part of the reason why I'm fascinated about the culture, because even when it comes to the West, it's still deeply rooted in the foundation of like the seriousness of relationships that you don't typically see in the modern Western world, which is why there's probably a niche for someone like yourself who is like serving the Western Indians, because there's still that ingrained cultural root there, right?
Yeah, because they want to be part of the culture. They want to carry on these traditions, but they also want to do it in their way, in a way that makes sense for them now, as somebody born and raised in this country who's been exposed to so much more, the internet. The last 20 years, obviously, the entire world has changed just from a mindset perspective because of the internet opening our eyes and bridging those gaps. So they want somebody like me who understands what it's like to talk to mom and dad at home and, get lectured for not getting good grades, things like that. But also somebody like me who understands what it's like to raise kids in a new modern way and fusing the cultures and understanding what's important. So I think that's why I resonate with this very distinct second generation Indian person in America, because I lived it. I'm a living example.